Hello fellow summoners! As many of you know, one-tricking a champion is probably the easiest way to climb to a higher rank in League of Legends. But using all your time and energy on a single champion is a serious commitment, so you better make sure it will pay off in the end. To lead you into the right direction, I will now show you one champion you can main for every single role to get some nice LP and start your climb. But real quick, how big is your champion pool as of right now? Let me know in the comments. My pick for top lane is Camille, and she has a lot of things going for her. First and foremost, her ban rate is extremely low and her pick rate is quite low as well, which means she will be open for you in a vast majority of your games. One-tricking doesn't do you any good if you are not allowed to play your champion, as you can imagine. On top of that, Camille has a high skill ceiling, so she is very rewarding and satisfying to play once you get the hang of it. While the average Camille player will have about a 50% win rate, Camille one-tricks who truly mastered her kit will win 56% of their games. Keep in mind, if your win rate is even slightly above 50%, you are guaranteed to climb long-term, so 56% is actually huge. Camille is strong in pretty much any situation you will find yourself in. At core, she is a bruiser who can split push with Tiamat and out-duel anyone who tries to answer her push, but she can also assassinate key targets in teamfights and engage from a screen length away with her hookshot. You can play her with Press the Attack or Conqueror and do fine, but many Camille one-tricks actually go for a Kleptomancy rune page. This makes a lot of sense, because Camille scales extremely hard with items and can reliably proc Klepto with her Q. In addition to Klepto, you get the free boots, which saves another 300 gold. Your early lane phase is rather weak, but you simply patch that with Biscuit Delivery and Second Wind. In all in lanes with Zero Poke, you replace Second Wind with Bone Plating, so your opponent cannot burst you down. Lastly, Camille can make great use of Shield Bash since it works with her passive ability and deals a surprisingly high amount of damage. Your core items are always Trinity Force and Ravenous Hydra with either Ninja Tabi or Mercury Treads. Trinity Force is super good on her for the same reasons Kleptomancy is good. The Spellblade is just so easily applied with her Q. Ravenous Hydra is also a must-buy in every single game, because Camille actually does not have wave clear built into her kit. After your core build, your itemization is very flexible and you can buy any tank or bruiser item the situation calls for. In the jungle position we have Nunu. While this might surprise you, since Nunu is mechanically rather easy to play, he has a deceptively high skill ceiling due to his many options in terms of macro play. More importantly though, he is neither picked nor banned in about 95% of all solo queue games, which is extremely important when looking for a champion to one-trick, as you've just learned. And once you have mastered the ins and outs of his jungle pathing and gank setups, Nunu will win you more than 57% of all games. Especially the lane ganks he can pull off with his big snowball are super scary and very difficult to deal with for the enemy laners, because the normal warding spots don't work against this. Additionally, Nunu has huge playmaking potential when it comes to Dragon and Baron fights, thanks to his Smite Consume burst damage, which lets you secure any valuable jungle monster when you have the timing down. Once the lane phase is over and teamfights are the main focus of the game, your job is to pick favorable fights and initiate them with your snowball. This is where you can display the decision-making skills you will have developed after spamming Nunu for a while. In a fight, your only goal is to stay alive and apply your crowd control for as long as possible. So Aftershock is your most reliable keystone. Font of Life is extra synergistic, as you will essentially perma-slow every enemy in a fight, and by that provide consistent healing for your teammates. Conditioning and Revitalize are also must-haves, as they just add to your tankiness and therefore to your teamfight presence. The secondary rune page is basically up to you, but your most consistent options are Legend Tenacity and Triumph for even more durability. If the game doesn't call for anything specific, you simply buy the items that have the most synergies with your kit, which are Cinderhulk, Spirit Visage and Deadman's Plate, with either Ninja Tabi or Mercury Treads. Besides that, Nunu can make great use of all tank items in the game, and also some utility items such as Knight's Vow, which are originally designed for support champions, are a good fit on Nunu. If you want a solid mid lane champion to one-trick, Annie might be exactly what you're looking for. With less than 3% solo queue presence, she is criminally underplayed. a fact that you can take advantage of. Once you get a feeling for her damage and ingrained her passive stun rotation into your head, you will have a huge advantage over your opponents since you know exactly when you can go for an all-in. On top of her burst potential, Annie has good wave clear and actually does not need all that much mana in the lane phase when you learn how to use her Q correctly. A good Annie player will threaten their lane opponent by stacking her passive and then start zoning and poking with her huge auto attack range. And even if your opponent plays correctly and stays out of one-shot range, you can simply push the wave and roam to other lanes. Not only do you potentially snowball your teammates with this strategy, but you also avoid being ganked in your own lane. This is important because Annie is a very old champion and therefore her kit is not overloaded with blinks and dashes. But still, this old kit is highly effective in the hands of a one-trick, as players like Anniebot prove. Electrocute is your most effective keystone because you go all in with your full spell rotation no matter what, so you're just more deadly without any downside. Again, your kit is old and therefore also not overloaded with innate healing abilities, so Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter are good choices. On top of that, you take all the damage runes you can get, which are Eyeball Collection, Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm. Your burst rotation is your only asset, so you have to buff it as much as possible. Molten Shield provides Annie with movement speed nowadays, which is solid for target access, but as soon as you complete your first item Spellbinder and your Sorceress Shoes, it will only be a matter of time until you start catching your opponents out of position. Afterwards, you just buy the standard AP carry items Luden's Echo and Deathcap. If you need the unique abilities, Zhonya's Hourglass and Void Staff are also good options for you. The best support champion to one-trick is Xerath. If you ever needed to lane against a good Xerath support yourself, you definitely know how unfun it is to play against. Xerath's massive range is just extremely oppressive in the bot lane, as AD carries need to be constantly on their toes while still trying to farm minions. Also, many support champions cannot do anything against him since he simply outranges them. Yes, you are immobile and you can get camped by the enemy jungler, but a Xerath one-trick will abuse his high range as much as possible and win lane without ever being exposed to danger themselves. Despite being fully damage-oriented, you still have good utility with your stun and your AoE slow. The fact that all your abilities are skill shots is a disadvantage for a casual Xerath player, but one-tricks will learn to condition the enemies and exploit their dodge patterns, and they can kill their targets even if they try to kite with bushes. After you gave your AD carry a free lane phase, you play the mid and late game staying protected by your teammates or turrets, and just spam your hard-hitting Q wearing the enemies down before the fight even has started. Of course, as a support you still need to place down wards, but since all your spells allow you to check bushes, you will never need to walk through unsafe territory. Arcane Comet and Scorch further add to your poke damage, especially during the lane, and Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, Biscuit Delivery and Cosmic Insight give you maximum mana and maximum cooldown reduction. Merely the insane uptime of your abilities will immensely constrict the enemy's options in the mid-game, as very few champions can actually face tank your damage. Luden's Echo plus your support item provide you with 30% cooldown reduction, which means you will reach 45% after hitting level 10. Once that is accomplished, you want as much damage as possible. Morello will max out your flat magic penetration and also make it harder for your opponents to heal off your poke damage, making it even more valuable. Late game, you want to buy a Deathcap and Zhonya's Hourglass or Void Staff if you need them. Last but not least, the best AD carry to one-trick is Misfortune. Yes, I might be somewhat biased on this one, and many people might argue that she is a champion for beginners and her kit would be too simple to make for a good one-trick, but actual statistical results show the exact opposite. Quite a number of people are maining her in Grandmaster and Challenger solo queue. And as most of you know, I got myself into high diamond one-tricking this champion. She is essentially the Nunu of the bot lane, as she indeed is mechanically easy, but requires you to make good macro decisions in order to truly shine. As a Misfortune one-trick, you will for example develop a feeling for your huge out-of-combat movement speed, which essentially allows you to overextend more than any other AD carry as long as you know exactly what you can get away with before an assassin can reach you. Once these timings become second nature, you can constantly out-rotate the enemy team during the mid-game, which puts an immense amount of pressure on their turrets. However, the most important macro skill a Misfortune player needs to master is knowing exactly how all the possible item and rune combinations work on her, since she has so many viable options. If you know what you're doing, you can make Misfortune work in every single meta, as she can effectively build around any threat. So even if huge patches hit the live servers, in which for example an entire class gets reworked, this has happened before by the way, Misfortune players will find a way to instantly adapt to the new environment. Due to that, mastering Misfortune is an investment that is guaranteed to pay off no matter what the balancing team has in mind. In the current meta, the most reliable keystone for Misfortune is Kleptomancy, as she can proc it very consistently in trades with her Q and her W. Magical Footwear is exceptionally good on her, since Misfortune does not care about boots early, which negates the drawback of this rune almost entirely. Biscuit Delivery buffs your already oppressive lane phase even more, and Legend Bloodline with Overheal allows you to abuse Misfortune's huge innate scaling with lifesteal and shielding effects. In case you don't know yet, it is impossible to interrupt Misfortune's passive movement speed from her W as long as she is protected by a shield. The core build that goes with this rune page is Essence Reaver, Berserker's Greaves and Infinity Edge. Crit items are expensive, but with Klepto Gold you will get them way earlier than you're supposed to. And while other AD carries suffer due to their extremely static and inflexible item builds, Misfortune can handily buy any semi-defensive attack damage item she needs after the two core items are completed. No other AD carry can get a Guardian Angel or a Morph Malmortius this early into the game and still deal insane damage. The combination of Misfortune's flexibility, her map pressure and her scary teamfight presence is truly unique. If you also want some of that Misfortune Freelo, you can get started and learn everything you need to know by clicking the video link right there on your screen. A big thank you to all my Patreons and channel members. If you want to become a Patreon yourself, just go to patreon.com/mfdb.